The Hall of Crowns had witnessed 10,000 years of Valoran triumphs. It had echoed with declarations of conquest, celebrations of victory, and the oaths of emperors whose fleets had reshaped entire sectors of the galaxy. It had never witnessed surrender. Yet on this day, silence hung over the chamber like a funeral shroud. No one spoke. No one moved. Hundreds of nobles, admirals, and warlords stood frozen beneath the vaulted crystal ceiling as Emperor Kenny rose slowly from his throne. For the first time in living memory, the ruler of the Valoran Empire looked tired. Not physically, spiritually. The kind of exhaustion earned only through decades of failure. His sapphire blue skin had darkened with stress, and the weight in his eyes seemed heavier than the ceremonial crown resting upon his brow. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the vast hall with the gravity of a death sentence. "We have exhausted every option." The words struck harder than any weapon. A ripple of unease spread through the gathered council. The war against the Kryn Dominion had raged for 30 brutal years. 30 years of burning worlds. 30 years of shattered fleets. 30 years of watching proud Valoran banners disappear from star systems that had belonged to them for centuries. Entire generations had known nothing except war. And they were losing. Badly. The Emperor's gaze swept across the chamber. "We have lost too many worlds, too many fleets, too many sons and daughters." His jaw tightened. There is only one path remaining. A terrible silence followed. Many already knew what he was about to say. None wanted to hear it. "We must seek humanity's assistance." The chamber exploded. Outrage erupted from every corner of the hall. Nobles shouted over one another. Military commanders openly protested. Several counselors looked as though they had been personally insulted. Among them stood Princess Liara, 7 feet tall, and every bit the image of a Valoran warrior. Her violet skin gleamed beneath the palace lights. Battle scars traced faint lines across her arms and neck, trophies earned during years spent on the front lines. Amber eyes burned with fury as her hand instinctively settled on the hilt of the sword hanging at her side. She had spent half her life fighting the Kryn. She had buried friends, commanded soldiers, watched worlds fall. And now the Empire was talking about asking humans for help? General Vorik stepped forward. The aging warlord looked genuinely disgusted. "Humans?" he growled. The word sounded like an insult. "Those fragile creatures?" He swept a clawed hand through the air. "They possess no claws, no natural armor, no warrior bloodlines." His voice rose louder. "They live barely a fraction of our lifespan, and only recently stumbled into faster-than-light travel." The hall erupted with approving murmurs. Many agreed. The Valorans were born for war. Humans were not. Or so everyone believed. Princess Liara remained silent. But inwardly, she agreed with every word. She had read the intelligence reports. Humans were smaller, physically weaker, short-lived. A young species occupying a single insignificant corner of the galaxy. Compared to the ancient warrior empires, they seemed almost laughably ordinary. The idea that humanity could succeed where the mighty Valoran Empire had failed felt absurd. Yet as the arguments continued around her, Liara noticed something unsettling. The Emperor wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He simply waited. As though he already knew something the rest of the chamber did not. And for the first time, a small seed of doubt crept into her mind. Because emperors did not beg for help, especially not from species they considered weak. Unless that species possessed a strength no one else had bothered to understand. Not asking them for help felt like the ultimate shame. But her father was right. The Valorans were dying. Every day the Kryn pushed deeper into their territory. Every week, another colony fell silent. The proud warrior empire that had stood for 3,000 years was collapsing. "The humans have agreed to help us," Emperor Kenny continued. "But they have one condition. They want a formal alliance. A marriage." The council erupted in angry voices. Marriage alliances were ancient tradition, but with humans, it was unthinkable. Liara stepped forward. "I will do it." The room went quiet. Her father looked at her with sad eyes. "Liara, you don't have to. I am third in line for the throne," she said. keeping her voice steady. My brothers lead our fleets. I am the logical choice. If my marriage can save our people, then I accept this duty. 3 weeks later, Liara stood in the same hall, wearing ceremonial armor, waiting to meet her future husband. The human delegation had arrived that morning. She had watched their ship land, a sleek vessel, much smaller than Valoran warships. Only 5 humans had emerged, 5 to save an empire. The doors opened and the humans entered. Liara studied them carefully. They walked on 2 legs like Valorans, but they were so small, the tallest barely reached her shoulder. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink, their hair in various colors. They looked fragile. Ambassador Claire Bennett led the group. She was a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She bowed respectfully to Emperor Connie. Your Majesty, thank you for receiving us. May I present Jake Morrison, the man selected to join your family. A human man stepped forward. Liara examined him with a warrior's eye. He was perhaps 6 feet tall with brown hair and gray eyes. He had an athletic build, but no visible scars, no marks of combat. He wore simple dark clothing, not armor. When he smiled at her, she saw no fear in his face, which surprised her. Princess Liara, he said, bowing slightly. It's an honor to meet you. His voice was calm, almost casual. Liara didn't know how to respond. Where was the nervousness, the awe? Didn't he understand he was marrying into a warrior culture thousands of years old? Jake works as a diplomatic liaison, Ambassador Bennett explained. He spent years studying Valorian culture and language. We believe he's the best choice for this alliance. A diplomat? Not even a soldier. Liara felt disappointment settle in her chest like a stone. The wedding ceremony was held 2 days later. It mixed Valoran traditions with human customs in ways that satisfied neither species. Liara wore her family's ceremonial armor, every piece decorated with the names of warriors who had worn it before. Jake wore a formal human suit, looking painfully out of place. When the priests asked for the traditional warrior's oath, Lara spoke the ancient words with pride. When they asked Jake to respond, he spoke in perfect Valoran, not stumbling over a single word. At least he had studied, she thought. The ceremony ended with the traditional blade exchange. Liara offered Jake a Valoran knife, a weapon her mother had carried. Jake accepted it with respect, then offered her a simple combat knife in return. She examined it. The blade was plain, functional, showing signs of use and maintenance, not a ceremonial piece, an actual weapon. It's been with me for 10 years, Jake said quietly. It saved my life more times than I can count. Liara looked at him sharply. What kind of diplomat carried a weapon that had saved his life repeatedly? But before she could ask, the ceremony concluded, and they were officially married. That night, Liara and Jake were given quarters in the palace. The rooms were large with separate sleeping areas, as was proper for a political marriage. Liara sat on her bed, still wearing her armor, feeling the weight of what she had done. Jake knocked on her door. May I come in? Enter. He stepped inside, having changed into more casual clothing. He looked around the room with interest, studying the weapons on the walls, the battle honors displayed on shelves. You have an impressive service record, he said, pointing to her decorations. 12 major battles, 3 solo victories against Kryn boarding parties. You earned your command through combat, not politics. You researched me. Of course, you're my wife now. I wanted to understand who you are. Liara stood towering over him. Then you know I am a warrior. I have killed more enemies than you could count. And you? What are you, Jake Morrison? A diplomat who studies languages and smiles at ceremonies? He met her eyes without flinching. I'm someone who does his job. Your job is to smile and talk sometimes. Sometimes it's other things. Like what? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, like making sure this alliance works. Like helping your people survive. Like being a husband who respects his wife, even if she thinks he's useless. Liara felt a flash of shame. He was right. She had been rude. He hadn't asked for this marriage any more than she had. I apologize, she said stiffly. That was beneath me. It's fine. I understand. You don't know me, and you're trusting your people's future to humans you think are weak. He moved to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Princess, humans aren't what we appear to be. We learned a long time ago that looking harmless is an advantage. Before she could ask what he meant, he left. 5 days later, they were preparing to leave for the border world, where they would establish their residence. Liara was packing weapons when the emergency alert sounded through the palace. General Vorik's face appeared on the communication screen. Princess Kryn battle fleet detected. They're heading for Meridian Station. 20 warships. The colony can't hold. Liara's blood went cold. Meridian Station had 40,000 civilians, mostly families, children. We're returning immediately, she said. Negative, Princess. Your father orders you to remain safe. We'll send. Jake appeared beside her. Which colony? Vorik looked at the human with barely concealed contempt. Meridian Station. Not that it concerns. I'll handle it, Jake said simply. The general stared. Lara stared. Jake's expression had changed. The casual diplomat was gone. Something else looked out from those gray eyes now. Something cold and calculating. Handle it, Vorik sputtered. You're one man. Yes. Jake agreed. Drop me at Meridian with standard loadout. I'll take care of the problem. Liara grabbed his arm. You can't be serious. That's suicide. 20 warships. Thousands of Kryn soldiers. Jake looked at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Princess, I appreciate the concern, but this is what I actually do. The diplomat thing, that's just cover. He turned back to Vorik. Send the coordinates in general. You might want to watch. It'll be educational. He walked away to gather his gear, leaving Lara standing frozen. Who had she married? Lara followed Jake to the armory, her mind racing with questions. He moved with purpose now, the casual diplomat's walk replaced by something more focused. When he entered the ship's armory, he went straight to a locked case she hadn't noticed before. Jake pressed his hand to the scanner. The case opened, revealing equipment Liara had never seen. A black tactical suit with strange markings, weapons that looked nothing like standard human military gear, small devices whose purpose she couldn't guess. What is all this? She demanded. Jake pulled out the tactical suit and began changing, completely unconcerned about her presence. My work gear. You said you were a diplomatic liaison. I am. That's my cover job. He secured the suit's fastenings with practiced ease. My actual job is Human Defense Corps, Special Operations Division. I handle problems. Liara felt anger rising. You lied. I was assigned to marry you. The cover story made that easier for everyone. He loaded weapons she couldn't identify into various pouches and holsters. Would your father have accepted the alliance if he knew he was marrying his daughter to a killer? The word hung in the air. Killer. Not soldier. Not warrior. Killer. How many? She asked. How many what? How many have you killed? Jake paused, his hands stilling on a weapon. I stopped counting after the first 100 missions. Somewhere around 2,000, I think. Maybe more. Liara's people celebrated their kill counts. Warriors boasted of their victories. But Jake said it like he was discussing paperwork. Just facts. Just numbers.
I'm going with you, she said.
No. That's my colony. My people. Jake looked at her, then really looked at her.
Princess.
I respect that. But what I do isn't about glory or honor. It's about efficiency. Having you there would complicate things. I'm a trained warrior. I fought Kryn before in open combat with rules. This isn't that. He finished gearing up and moved toward the door. You want to come? Fine. But you stay in orbit and watch. Learn what humans actually do when we fight. The ship dropped them at Meridian Station 6 hours later. The colony was built into a large asteroid, its surface covered with mining equipment and habitation domes. 40,000 people lived here, extracting rare minerals that powered Valoran technology. The Kryn fleet appeared on sensors as Jake's shuttle approached the surface. 20 warships, just as reported. They moved into attack position, blocking any escape route. Liara watched from the stealth shuttle she had taken against Jake's wishes. She wasn't going to miss this, even if she had to disobey. Her sensors tracked Jake's life sign as he entered the colony through a maintenance tunnel. What's he doing? She muttered, watching him move through the colony's underground passages instead of heading to the defenses. The Kryn fleet opened fire on the colony shields. The barriers held, but they wouldn't last long. Then Kryn dropships launched, carrying ground troops toward the surface. Liara counted the ships, 30 dropships, at least 2,000 soldiers, and Jake was still moving through maintenance tunnels, seemingly avoiding everyone. The Kryn. Their soldiers poured out. Big reptilian creatures with heavy armor and plasma weapons. They spread through the colony in organized units, clearly expecting easy victory. Then the explosion started. Liara's sensors lit up with alerts. A mining tunnel collapsed, crushing an entire tunnel. A power conduit overloaded, sending electricity through a maintenance corridor where Kryn's soldiers were advancing. A pressure door sealed automatically, trapping troops in a section that suddenly lost atmosphere. It took her a moment to understand. Jake wasn't fighting the Kryn. He was using the colony itself as a weapon. She watched in growing amazement as Jake moved through the colony like a ghost. He appeared behind small groups of Kryn, eliminated them quickly with weapons that made almost no sound, then vanished before reinforcements arrived. He rerouted mining equipment, turning massive drills toward Kryn positions. He hacked environmental systems, flooding sections with sleeping gas or dropping temperatures to lethal levels. The Kryn weren't fighting a soldier. They were fighting the entire station, and they didn't understand what was happening. 2 hours in, the Kryn ground commander realized they were losing. He called for orbital support. The warships powered up their main weapons, preparing to bombard Jake's last known position. Lara tensed. Even Jake couldn't survive orbital bombardment, but Jake had already moved to the colony's mining laser array, massive industrial tools designed to cut through asteroids. Liara watched in disbelief as he worked on the control systems, his fingers moving faster than she could track. The mining lasers rotated toward space. Then they fired. The beams weren't designed as weapons, but they didn't need to be. Each laser could slice through solid rock. Against Kryn warship hulls, they cut like knives through paper. 3 ships simply broke apart as the beams carved through their cores. The remaining Kryn fleet pulled back, clearly not expecting ground-based weapons that could threaten them. They started to maneuver for another attack angle. Jake fired again. 2 more ships died, their reactors exploding in brilliant flashes. The Kryn fleet commander made the smart choice. He retreated. 15 warships jumped away, leaving their ground forces behind. Those forces didn't last long. Cut off from support, facing an enemy they couldn't see or predict, they surrendered within the hour. Lara landed her shuttle at the colony's main dock. She found Jake there, directing colonists to medical stations and helping repair teams assess damage. He had removed his helmet, and she could see his face clearly now. He looked tired. His hands shook slightly as he worked. There was blood on his suit, though she couldn't tell if it was his or from enemies. "You're hurt," she said, approaching him. Coup of bruises, nothing serious. He kept working, not meeting her eyes. "Jake." She put her hand on his shoulder, gently turning him to face her. "Look at me." He did. She saw something in his eyes then that she hadn't expected. Not pride or satisfaction, just exhaustion and a deep sadness. 2,000 soldiers, she said quietly. You killed them all. Most of them. Some surrendered. Some ran. His voice was flat. Standard operation. Use the environment. Hit supply lines. Create chaos. Make the enemy fight the terrain instead of you. We don't fight like that. I know you fight with honor. Face to face. Testing strength against strength. Jake pulled away from her touch. Humans learned a long time ago that fighting fair is how you lose. We fight to win. We use every advantage. We adapt. Lara watched him move to help an injured colonist, supporting the older man's weight easily, despite his own exhaustion. The colonists looked at Jake with awe and gratitude. They didn't care about honor or tradition. He had saved their lives. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked when he returned. "Tell you what, that you were dangerous?" Jake actually smiled at that, a tired expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Princess, every human is dangerous. We're not strong like you. We're not tough. We don't have natural weapons. So we learn to make everything a weapon. Environment, technology, information, fear. We adapt. That's what we do. And the diplomat act, not an act. I am a diplomat. That's how I understand cultures, how I find weaknesses, how I make friends and alliances." He started walking toward the shuttle. The fighting is just when talking doesn't work. They flew back toward the Valoran homeworld in silence. Liara kept replaying what she had witnessed. One man, one human, against 2,000 soldiers and 20 warships. And he had won. What had her people gotten themselves into? As they approached the capital, emergency communications started flooding in. General Vorik's voice cut through the noise, urgent and afraid. "Princess, we have a problem. Kryn intelligence just intercepted. They're hiring mercenaries. The Zathari clans." Liara's blood went cold. The Zathari were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Massive, powerful, undefeated in personal combat. They're sending their champion, Vorik continued. Drathar the undefeated. He's coming to kill the royal family. Coming to kill you. Liara looked at Jake. He was listening to the communication, his face thoughtful. A champion, he said quietly. That's different. Different how? She asked. Jake's expression shifted into something she was beginning to recognize. The casual diplomat vanished. The killer emerged. Different because champions fight for glory. They want an audience. They want honor. He met her eyes. Which means I can use that. Use it. How? I'll challenge him. Draw him in. Control the battlefield. Jake. He's 9 feet tall, 4 arms, natural armor. He's killed opponents from 50 different species. He's never lost. Then he's overconfident, Jake said simply. That's an advantage. You can't be serious. Princess, I just took out 2,000 soldiers by myself. You think I can't handle one overconfident champion? He started preparing gear again. That same focused intensity returning. Besides, he's coming for you. That makes it personal. Lara felt something strange in her chest. This man she barely knew, this human she had thought weak, was preparing to die protecting her. You don't have to do this, she said. Jake looked at her, and for the first time she saw real emotion in his eyes. Yes, I do. You're my wife now, and humans protect what's theirs. The words were simple, possessive, even, but somehow, they made Lara feel safer than she had in years. The Valoran homeworld prepared for war. Not the kind of war they knew with fleets and armies, but something more terrifying. An assassin was coming, a champion who had never been defeated. Drathar, the undefeated, had killed trained warriors in seconds. Palace security doubled, then tripled. Elite guards positioned themselves at every entrance. Liara stood in the war room with her father, General Vorik, and Jake. They studied intelligence reports on Drathar. The images made even experienced warriors nervous. 9 feet of pure muscle and natural armor. 4 arms each capable of wielding a different weapon simultaneously. Reflexes faster than anything Valorans had. In 300 years of mercenary work, Drathar had killed over 1,000 opponents. He fought for sport as much as payment. We can't let him reach the palace, General Vorik said, pointing at defensive positions on the map. We'll position troops here, here, and here. Set up kill zones. Overwhelm him with numbers. Won't work, Jake said quietly. Everyone looked at him. He stood away from the table, arms crossed, studying the ceiling as if seeing something they couldn't. What do you mean it won't work? Vorik demanded. You're thinking like soldiers. Drathar isn't a soldier. He's a champion. He wants glory. Jake looked at them. Then you set up an ambush. He'll know. He'll either avoid it or turn it into a public massacre. Either way, civilians die. Then what do you suggest? Emperor Kanye asked. I challenge him publicly. Make it a formal duel. Liara stepped forward. That's suicide. I won't allow it. Jake turned to her. It's not your choice, princess. He's coming for you and your family. This is the only way to control where and how the fight happens. Jake, you saw the reports. He's killed hundreds, and I've killed thousands. Just not in formal combat. He walked to the table looking at the palace layout. A champion fights for glory. That's his weakness. He'll accept a public challenge because refusing would damage his reputation. Once I get him into a controlled arena, I can use the environment against him. You're going to use tricks? Vorik said with disgust. Yes, because tricks work. Jake looked at the general without any shame. You want to fight him honorably? Send your best warrior. He'll die in 30 seconds, and then Drathar will come for the princess anyway. Or you can let me do this my way. The room fell silent. Lara wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny his logic. Everything Jake said made sense, even if it violated every warrior tradition she had learned. Emperor Cain spoke. If you fail, human, my daughter becomes a widow and an easy target. If I fail, your daughter will already be dead. Drathar doesn't leave loose ends. Jake said it without emotion, just stating facts. But I won't fail. How can you be so certain? Because I'm still alive after 10 years of doing this work. And because I'm very, very good at studying opponents and finding weaknesses. Lara grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him aside away from the others. You're going to die, she said quietly. Maybe. Doesn't that scare you? Jake looked at her for a long moment. Everything scares me, princess. Every mission, every fight. Fear keeps you sharp. It keeps you alive. He touched her face gently, a gesture that surprised her. But I'm more afraid of what happens to you if I don't do this. Before she could respond, alarms blared through the palace. Communications lit up with reports. A ship had entered the system. Not Kryn, not Valoran, something else. He's here, Vorik said, his voice tight with tension. But the sensors showed something unexpected. 2 ships. One was clearly Zathari design, probably Drathar's personal vessel. The other was human. That's the Midnight Runner, Jake said, a smile crossing his face for the first time in days. They sent Ryan. Who's Ryan? Lara asked. My former commanding officer. Best operator the Defense Corps ever produced. Jake headed for the door. This just got easier. Liara followed him to the landing pad. A single human emerged from the Midnight Runner. He was older than Jake, maybe 50, with gray threading through his dark hair. He had the same efficient way of moving, the same calculating eyes. Jake, the man said, gripping Jake's hand firmly. Heard you got married. Congratulations. Thanks, Ryan. Didn't expect backup. Command thought you might need a hand with the Azari situation. Ryan turned to Liara and bowed slightly. Princess Liara, I'm Ryan Cooper. Pleasure to meet you. You came all this way to help with one assassin? She asked. Ryan and Jake exchanged a look that might have been amusement. Princess Ryan said carefully. When Command heard Drathar was involved, they called me out of retirement. Your husband is good at his job, but Drathar is special. Needs special handling. You fought Zathari before? Killed 3 of them on Orion Station 12 years ago. Different situation, but same basic principles apply. Ryan picked up his gear bag like it weighed nothing. Where's this champion now? Drathar made his presence known 2 hours later. His broadcast went out across every channel, impossible to block or ignore. His image appeared on screens throughout the capital, a massive creature covered in dark scales and natural armor plates. His forearms held different weapons. His eyes burned with predatory intelligence. People of Valoria, his voice boomed. I have been hired to eliminate your royal family. I offer you a choice. Send your strongest warrior to face me in combat. If they defeat me, I leave. If I win, I complete my contract. He showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. You have 1 day to decide. The broadcast ended. The palace erupted in chaos. Some wanted to evacuate the royal family. Others wanted to send their best warriors. General Vorik volunteered to face Drathar himself. Jake and Ryan sat in a corner talking quietly. Liara approached them, needing to understand what they were planning. He's good, Ryan was saying. Faster than expected. That armor is nearly impenetrable. But he's cocky, Jake replied. Did you see how he holds the lower weapons? Drops his guard for a split second every time he shifts stance. Notice that. Also noticed he favors his left side. Old injury, maybe healed, but still a weak point. They were discussing Drathar like he was a puzzle to solve, not a legendary champion. You're both insane, Lara said. Ryan looked up at her and smiled. Probably. But we're alive and most of our enemies aren't. So the insanity seems to work. Jake can't fight him alone. He won't be alone, Ryan said. I'll be in the crowd. If things go wrong, I'll intervene. That's cheating. Yes, both men said at the same time. Jake stood and faced her. Princess, understand something. We're not Valoran warriors. We don't care about honor in combat. We care about mission success. If that means cheating, we cheat. If it means fighting dirty, we fight dirty. The only rule is win. And if you both die, Ryan answered, then Drathar comes for you, and you'll have to use everything we've taught you in the last few hours. You've taught me nothing. We will, Jake said. Right now. Come on. They spent the rest of the day training Liara in human combat techniques. Not the elegant sword forms of Valoran tradition, but brutal efficiency. Strike weak points. Use the environment. Fight dirty. Never give an enemy time to recover. Forget everything you learned about honor, Ryan instructed. A fight isn't a dance. It's a problem to solve. Fastest solution wins. Liara tried to argue that there was more to combat than efficiency, but Jake stopped her with a simple question. Do you want to win, or do you want to look good losing? That night, Jake accepted Drathar's challenge. The broadcast went out across all channels. Jake Morrison, human diplomat, would face Drathar the Undefeated in the ceremonial arena. Tomorrow at noon, winner takes all. Drathar's response was immediate and mocking. A human? They send me a diplomat? This will be over in seconds. We'll see, Jake replied calmly. Liara couldn't sleep that night. She found Jake on the balcony of their quarters, looking out over the city. He was wearing light armor, testing its movement, making adjustments. You should rest, she said. Can't need to stay focused. He continued his stretches, keeping his muscles loose. Jake, you don't have to die for me. We barely know each other. He stopped moving and looked at her. Princess, I've spent 10 years fighting people I've never met, to protect people I'll never know. You're my wife. That makes this personal. He went back to his stretches. Besides, I'm not planning to die, I'm planning to win. How? He's bigger, stronger, faster, and overconfident and predictable, and so focused on his reputation that he'll fight the way I want him to. Jake smiled. You know what makes humans dangerous? We're not impressive. We don't look threatening, so enemies underestimate us until it's too late. Is that what you're counting on? Him underestimating you? That, and about 30 other factors I've been calculating since I saw his broadcast. He finished his stretches and came to stand beside her. Trust me, princess, this is what I do. The arena filled with spectators the next day. Thousands of Valorans came to witness the fight. Drathar arrived first, making a show of his entrance. He roared, displaying all 4 arms, demonstrating his strength. Jake walked in alone, wearing light armor and carrying 2 simple blades. He looked tiny compared to the champion. Lara sat in the royal box with her father and Ryan. Her hands gripped the railing so tight her knuckles turned white. He's going to die, she whispered. Maybe, Ryan said calmly. But I doubt it. Jake survived worse. The fight began. Drathar charged immediately. All 4 weapons swinging in a pattern too fast to follow. Jake simply wasn't there. He moved like water flowing around the attacks, never trying to block or counter, just moving. What's he doing? Emperor Kanye asked. Learning, Ryan replied, watching the patterns, finding weaknesses. For 3 minutes, Jake only dodged. The crowd started murmuring, confused. Some called him a coward, but Lara noticed something. Every time Drathar attacked, Jake studied the movement. His eyes tracked every motion, calculating. Then Jake attacked. One quick strike. So fast Liara almost missed it. Jake's blade hit a joint in Drathar's lower left arm, not enough to wound, but enough to cause pain. Drathar roared and swung all 4 arms, but Jake was already gone. Another strike, another joint, another flash of pain across Drathar's face. He's not trying to kill him, Liara said, understanding dawning. He's studying him. Now you're getting it, Ryan said with a smile. The fight continued. Jake landed dozens of small strikes, each one targeting joints, nerve clusters, weak points in the armor. None were killing blows, but they added up. Drathar's movements grew slower, less precise. After 10 minutes, the champion was breathing hard. 3 of his 4 arms hung useless, nerve damage making them unreliable. His armor was scratched but not broken, but Jake had systematically destroyed the functionality beneath it. You fight without honor, Drathar bellowed. I fight to win, Jake replied, circling. Then came the final attack. Drathar lunged with his remaining good arm, putting all his strength into one desperate strike. Jake used the champion's momentum against him, sidestepping and guiding the blade into the arena floor. Drathar's arm stuck for just a second. That was enough. Jake broke Drathar's leg with a precise strike. The champion fell. The arena went silent. Jake stood over Drathar, blade ready. You fought well. Go home. Tell them what happens when they threaten my wife. He walked away, leaving Drathar alive but defeated. The crowd erupted in chaos, not sure what they had witnessed. Lara ran down from the royal box, pushing through guards. She found Jake outside the arena, leaning against a wall, bleeding from dozens of small cuts. Ryan was already there, checking his injuries. You're hurt, she said. Jake looked up and smiled tiredly. Worth it. You're safe. Then he collapsed. Jake woke up 2 days later in the Palace Medical Center. His body was covered in bandages and machines monitored his vital signs. The first thing he saw was Liara sitting beside his bed, her amber eyes showing an emotion he hadn't seen before. Worry. You're awake, she said softly. How long was I out? 2 days. The doctor said you had 14 broken bones, massive internal bleeding, and nerve damage in your left arm. She touched his hand carefully. They said you should be dead. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his entire body. Drathar. He left the planet. His contract is void. The Zathari clans withdrew from the war. Liara helped him settle back against the pillows. You won. We won, he corrected. Ryan was backup. You provided intelligence. Team effort. You fought him alone. Yeah, that part wasn't my favorite. He managed a weak smile. But it worked. Liara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. You could have died for me for people you barely know. That's the job. No. The job was marrying me for the Alliance. Fighting a legendary champion wasn't part of the agreement. Jake looked at her seriously. Princess, the moment I married you, everything about you became part of the agreement. Your safety, your happiness, your people's survival, all of it. Before Liara could respond, Ryan entered with General Vorik. Both looked grim. We have a problem, Vorik said without preamble. Of course we do, Jake muttered. What now? Ryan pulled up a holographic display. It showed intelligence reports, chemical formulas, and facility layouts. While you were unconscious, Valoran intelligence intercepted Kryn communications. They've developed a biological weapon specifically targets Valoran DNA. Liara stood so fast her chair fell over. A plague. Worse, it's designed to mutate. First generation kills within days. Each mutation gets faster and more contagious. Ryan zoomed in on a space station orbiting a dying star. This is Black Spire Station. That's where they're manufacturing it. Intelligence says it'll be ready to deploy in 72 hours. We need to destroy it, Vorik said. But it's deep in Kryn space. Getting a fleet there would trigger a sector-wide war. We'd lose millions before we even reach the station. Jake studied the display, his mind clearly working despite the pain. So we don't send a fleet, we send a small team. Infiltrate. Destroy the weapon. Get out clean. My thoughts exactly, Ryan said. Which is why I'm going. Command already approved the mission. Not alone. You're not. Jake started pulling off monitoring equipment. Jake, you can barely stand, Lara protested. I'll manage. This is too big for one person. He swung his legs off the bed, biting back obvious pain. Ryan, how many operators can we get? Human Command is sending 3 more specialists. They'll be here in 8 hours. Ryan pulled up personnel files. Lisa Grant, demolitions expert. Marcus Webb, technology and hacking. Casey Liu, long-range support. Jake nodded, studying each file. Good team. We'll need XTU. I'm coming with you. Lara interrupted. All 3 men looked at her. Princess, this is a human military operation, Vorik began. Those are my people. That weapon will kill. This is my war. She crossed her arms, her warrior's stance making her position clear. I'm coming. Jake and Ryan exchanged a look. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Fine, Jake said. But you follow our orders. No heroics, no warrior's honor, no breaking formation. You do exactly what we say when we say it. Agreed. And you train with us for the next 8 hours. Learn how we operate. If you can't keep up, you stay behind. Lara's eyes flashed with anger, but she nodded. The training was brutal. Ryan and Jake, despite Jake's injuries, put Liara through every scenario they could think of. Stealth movement, silent kills, equipment use, hand signals, emergency procedures. They didn't teach her the Valoran way. They taught her the human way. Move like you're invisible, Ryan instructed as she crawled through a training course. Silence over speed always. If someone sees you, neutralize them immediately, Jake added. No hesitation, no challenges, just eliminate the threat. It went against everything Lyra had been taught. Valoran warriors announced themselves. They fought openly. This skulking in shadows felt wrong, but she remembered Jake defeating Drathar. She remembered him saving Meridian Station. The human way worked, even if it wasn't honorable. The other 3 operators arrived as scheduled. Lisa Grant was a woman in her 30s, with red hair and an easy smile that didn't match the dangerous look in her eyes. Marcus Webb was younger, maybe 25, with dark skin and fingers that never stopped moving. Casey Liu was quiet, speaking rarely, but her eyes never missed anything. They gathered in a secure briefing room. Ryan projected the mission plan on the table. Black Spire Station, he began, heavily defended, automated systems, elite guards, and multiple fail-safes, designed to release the plague if anyone tries to breach him properly. "So we don't breach improperly?" Lisa said with a grin. "We breach perfectly." Marcus pulled up the station's technical specifications. Security is top level. Biometric locks, encrypted networks, redundant systems. But I can crack it given enough time. "How much time?" Jake asked. "Depends on what they're running. Could be minutes, could be hours." "We might not have hours," Ryan said. "Intelligence suggests they've moved up the deployment schedule. We have maybe 48 hours before they launch. Then we move fast." Jake pointed to the station layout. "We split into 2 teams. Team 1, that's me, Lara, and Derek. We go for the bioweapon lab. Team 2, Ryan, Lisa, Marcus, and Casey. You secure our escape route and handle any surprises." "What kind of surprises?" Liara asked. "The kind that try to kill us," Lisa said cheerfully. "Standard operation." They spent the next 6 hours planning every detail. Approach vectors, backup plans, emergency extractions, communication protocols. The humans planned with an obsessive attention to detail that amazed Liara. They considered every possible variable, every potential problem. "Is it always like this?" she asked Jake during a break. "The planning?" "Yes. Most of our success comes before we ever enter the battle space." He showed her the mission timeline. "See how we have 4 different extraction plans? That's because things always go wrong. The team that prepares for failure survives when failure happens. Valoran warriors trust their strength and skills. And that's why you're losing the war." Jake said it gently, but the truth stung. "Princess, I've seen your people fight. You're brave, strong, and skilled, but you don't adapt. You follow tradition even when it doesn't work. Humans learn to abandon tradition for survival." The mission launched 12 hours later. They used a captured Kryn supply ship to approach Black Spire Station undetected. Liara wore human tactical gear that felt strange compared to her armor. No decorations, no marks of honor, just functional equipment designed to keep her alive. As they approached the station, Jake briefed them one final time. "Remember, silence until contact. If we're detected, we lose the advantage." "Marcus, how long until you can hack the docking bay?" "Give me 30 seconds once we're in range." "Casey, once we dock, you find a vantage point. I want eyes on every approach." "Copy that, Lisa. Prep charges. If we need to leave in a hurry, I want that station unable to follow." "Already done. Got enough explosives to turn this place into debris." Jake turned to Liara. "Princess, you're with me. Stay close, stay quiet, and trust the gear. The suit will mask your heat signature and dampen sound. Let it do its job." The ship docked without incident. Marcus worked his magic on the security systems, and the airlock opened smoothly. They moved into the station like ghosts. Liara had trained in infiltration, but never like this. The humans moved with absolute silence, communicating through hand signals and equipment that connected directly to their suits. They flowed through corridors like water, avoiding patrols, bypassing security checkpoints, leaving no trace of their presence. They reached a junction where the teams had to split. Ryan nodded to Jake. No words needed. Years of working together made verbal communication unnecessary. Jake led Liara and Derek toward the laboratory section. The corridors became more secure here with additional guards and sensors. Derek, the team medic, pointed to his scanner. 3 guards. Next corridor. Standard patrol pattern. Jake made a quick hand signal. Wait. They stayed hidden while the patrol passed. Once clear, they moved forward. It took an hour to reach the laboratory, moving slowly and carefully. The lab itself was behind multiple security doors. Marcus's voice came through their communication system. "Got eyes on your position. Ready to unlock doors on your signal." "Stand by," Jake replied. Then to Liara. "This is where it gets dangerous. Once we're inside, we need to move fast. The weapon is there, but so are scientists and guards. We extract what we need for a cure, then destroy everything else." "How many inside?" Liara asked. "Sensors show 12 Kryn, 6 guards, 6 scientists. We're outnumbered." Jake smiled behind his helmet. "We usually are. That's why we fight smart." Marcus unlocked the first door. They slipped inside immediately, taking cover. The laboratory was huge, filled with equipment Liara didn't recognize. TR scientists worked at stations, unaware of the intruders. Jake pointed to a secure vault on the far side. That was their target. They moved between equipment stations, staying low and quiet. They were halfway across the lab when one scientist turned unexpectedly. He saw Liara. His eyes went wide. He opened his mouth to sound the alarm. Liara reacted on instinct, the training from the past days taking over. She covered the distance in 2 steps and hit him with a precise strike Jake had taught her. The scientist dropped unconscious without making a sound. She caught the body before it fell, lowering it gently to the ground. Her heart pounded. That had been close. Too close. Jake's voice in her ear. Good reaction. Keep moving. They reached the vault. Derek pulled out equipment to bypass the locks while Jake and Lara guarded the approach. Every second felt like an hour. Almost there, Derek muttered, working quickly. The vault opened. Inside were dozens of containers holding the bow weapon. Derek carefully extracted 3 samples, sealing them in protective cases. Got what we need for the cure, Lisa, Jake called through communications. We're ready for demolition on it. Charges set on the primary reactor. You've got 10 minutes once I start the sequence. But then alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Cringe voices shouted in their language. We're compromised. Ryan's voice cut through the noise. Prohl found our entry point. They know you're here. Jake's expression never changed. Execute extraction plan. Delta, Lisa, start the countdown now. Countdown started. 9 minutes to detonation. Guards poured into the laboratory. Jake and Derek opened fire, their weapons making quiet coughing sounds compared to the loud plasma weapons the Kryn used. Liara fought beside them, using everything the humans had taught her. Fast strikes to weak points. Use cover. Keep moving. Don't stand and fight when you can run and survive. They fought their way back to the corridor, but more guards kept coming. The station was fully alert now. Ryan, we need that extraction route clear, Jake called. Working on it. We've got heavy resistance on our end. Casey's keeping them back, but we're pinned down. 7 minutes until detonation. New plan, Jake said. Everyone, head for the secondary hangar. We'll take a cringe ship if we have to. They ran through corridors as explosions echoed behind them. Lisa's charges were destroying key systems throughout the station. The lights flickered. Emergency systems activated. 5 minutes. They reached the hangar to find Ryan's team in a firefight. 20 Kryn soldiers had them pinned behind cargo containers. Casey's rifle picked off targets with perfect precision, but there were too many. Jake assessed the situation in seconds. Derek, Liara, help Ryan's team. I'll get us a ship. That's suicide, Liara shouted over the weapons fire. No, it's improvisation. Jake ran toward the nearest Kryn ship before anyone could stop him. Liara watched in horror as Jake sprinted across open ground, enemy fire tracking him. He moved impossibly fast, zigzagging in patterns that made him hard to target. He reached the ship and disappeared inside. 3 minutes. The ship's engines suddenly roared to life. Jake's voice over communications. Everyone on board now. Ryan's team provided covering fire while they retreated to the ship. Casey was last, walking backwards, her rifle never stopping. The moment she was aboard, Jake piloted the ship out of the hangar. Behind them, Black Spire Station exploded. The reactor breach created a chain reaction that destroyed the entire facility. The bow weapon, the research, the scientists, everything disappeared in a ball of fire. Inside the ship, everyone was silent, breathing hard, processing what had happened. Lara looked at Jake in the pilot seat. His hands were steady on the controls, but she could see sweat on his face. He had been terrified just like the rest of them, but he had done it anyway. Mission success, Ryan said quietly. We've got samples for a cure. The weapon is destroyed. What about the second facility? Lara asked. Marcus pulled up new intelligence. Already hit it. Combined human Valoran strike team took it out 2 hours ago, while we were infiltrating this one. The Kryn bow weapon program is done. They flew back to Valoran space in silence. Liara sat beside Jake watching him pilot. This man had risked his life for her people again. He did it without hesitation, without asking for glory or honor. Thank you, she said quietly. Jake glanced at her. For what? For everything. For saving my people. For teaching me. For being my husband when you didn't have to be. He smiled. Princess, I stopped doing this because I had to about 100 missions ago. I do it because it matters. Because people like you are worth saving. For the first time since their arranged marriage, Liara realized she had fallen in love with this strange, dangerous, brilliant human. The return to the Valoran homeworld was different from any victory Liara had experienced before. There were no parades, no public celebrations. The mission to Blackspire Station remained classified. Only a handful of people knew what Jake and his team had done. Only those few understood how close the Valoran species had come to extinction. The plague samples were delivered to Valoran scientists who worked with human medical experts to develop a cure. Within 2 weeks, they had a working vaccine. Within a month, every Valoran in the Empire had been immunized against a weapon they never knew existed. Jake spent those weeks recovering from injuries and training Valoran special forces in human tactics. Liara watched him work with her people, patiently teaching them to think differently about combat. Not every warrior accepted the lessons. Many still clung to tradition, but some, the smart ones, learned. 6 weeks after the Black Spire mission, Liara found Jake on the palace balcony at sunset. He stood alone, watching the city lights come on as darkness fell. She approached quietly, having learned stealth from the best. "You're getting better at that," Jake said without turning around. "I heard you, but 3 months ago, I would have heard you from twice as far away." Liara stood beside him. "Is that a compliment?" "It is. You've become a solid operator." He looked at her then, and smiled. "Your father wants to give you a military commendation for the mission. I told him you earned it. He wants to give you one too, and Ryan and the others." Jake shook his head. "We don't do it for medals." "I know, but you should still accept. My people need to see that humans aren't just diplomats or advisors. They need to understand what you really are." "And what's that?" "Dangerous," Liara said simply, "in the best possible way." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Over the past months, their relationship had changed. The political arrangement had become genuine partnership. Respect had grown into friendship. Friendship had become something more. "The Kryn sent a communication today," Jake said. "Eventually, they want to negotiate peace." Liara tensed. "After everything they've done, they're beaten, Princess. We destroyed their fleet strength, eliminated their bioweapon program, and proved we can strike anywhere in their territory. They know they can't win." He pulled up a datapad showing the communication. "They're offering a full ceasefire, withdrawal from contested territories, and reparations. My father will never accept. Not after 30 years of war. He should, because if he doesn't, this war will continue for 30 more years. More deaths, more destruction, more colonies lost." Jake looked at her seriously. "Sometimes the hardest part of war is knowing when to stop fighting." The peace negotiations took 3 months. Representatives from both sides met on a neutral station with human diplomats mediating. Liara attended as her father's representative, and Jake accompanied her as military advisor. The Kryn delegation was led by War Marshal Krathos, a career soldier who had fought Valorans his entire life. He looked at Liara with barely concealed hatred. "Your kind killed my son," he said during the first session. "Your kind killed thousands of mine," Liara replied. "We can trade losses all day, Marshal, or we can end this." The negotiations were difficult. Both sides wanted concessions the other wouldn't give. Tempers flared several times. Talks nearly collapsed. Through it all, Jake remained calm, offering suggestions, finding compromises, keeping everyone focused on the goal. During a break on the 3rd day, Krathos approached Jake privately. Liara watched from a distance, ready to intervene if needed. "You're the human who destroyed Blackspire," Krathos said. "It wasn't a question. I was part of the team," Jake replied carefully. "You killed 17 Kryn soldiers getting to that laboratory." "I did." Krathos studied him for a long moment. "My son died in that battle. He was a guard there." Liara tensed, her hand moving toward her weapon. But Jake simply met the Marshal's eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss," Jake said quietly. "I know those words don't mean much, but I am. Why should I make peace with the people who killed my son? Because your son died in a war that should have ended years ago. Because more sons will die if we don't stop this." Jake's voice was steady, but Liara heard the pain in it. "Marshal, I've killed hundreds of people in my career. I remember most of their faces. I carry that weight every day. Your son was a soldier doing his duty, and he died because our governments couldn't find a better way. Don't let more parents bury their children because of pride." Kathos was silent for a long time. Then he nodded slowly and returned to his delegation. The peace treaty was signed 2 weeks later. The terms were fair, if painful, for both sides. The Kryn withdrew from Valoran space. The Valorans returned certain disputed territories. Both sides agreed to a demilitarized zone, and establish trade agreements. Human mediators would monitor the peace for 10 years. When Emperor Canny signed the treaty, his hand shook. 30 years of war ended with ink on paper. The celebration was massive. The Valoran people poured into the streets, celebrating an end to a war that had defined an entire generation. But Liara noticed Jake slip away from the public events, heading to the quiet gardens behind the palace. She found him sitting by a fountain alone in the darkness. "You should be celebrating," she said. "I am in my own way." She sat beside him. "You don't like crowds?" "I don't like being celebrated for killing people." He looked at the water flowing from the fountain. "Everyone out there is happy the war is over. They should be, but they don't think about the Kryn families who lost loved ones. They don't think about the soldiers on both sides who died for nothing. They didn't die for nothing. They died defending their people. They died because their leaders couldn't talk to each other like adults." Jake's voice held an edge she rarely heard. "Every war I've fought, every mission I've completed, I know it was necessary. I know I saved lives by taking lives. But that doesn't make it good. It just makes it necessary." Liara took his hand. "You carry too much weight, Jake Morrison. Someone has to." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of celebration distant but present. "What happens now?" Lyra asked. "The war is over. Your mission is complete. Will you go back to Earth?" Jake turned to look at her, surprised. "Do you want me to leave?" "No, but I thought maybe you would want to." This was an assignment, a job. It was at first. He squeezed her hand. "But somewhere between fighting Drathar, destroying plague stations, and teaching your people how to survive, it became more than that. You became more than that. We barely knew each other when we married. And now," Liara smiled, "now, I can't imagine my life without you. You're annoying, reckless, and you have no respect for proper warrior tradition. But you're also brave, brilliant, and you care more deeply than anyone I've ever met. Is that a proposal, princess? We're already married, you idiot." "True, but this is different. Before was duty. I'm asking if you want me to stay because you want me to stay." Lara answered by kissing him. It was their first real kiss, not the ceremonial one from their wedding. This one meant something. When they pulled apart, Jake smiled. "I'll take that as a yes." 6 months later, peace had truly settled over the galaxy. The Kryn-Valoran War was history. Trade routes reopened. Refugees returned home. Soldiers on both sides went back to being civilians. Jake accepted a permanent position as military liaison between Valoran and humanity. Ryan returned to Earth, but visited regularly. Lisa, Marcus, and Casey rotated through, training Valoran special forces in human methods. The war might be over, but the knowledge humans brought was too valuable to waste. Lara took a position as her father's advisor on military matters. She had learned too much from the humans to go back to traditional warfare. She became an advocate for adapting, for learning, for doing what worked rather than what was traditional. Not everyone appreciated the changes. General Vorik resigned rather than accept dishonorable tactics. Some warriors left the military entirely, unwilling to abandon the old ways. But others, the ones who understood that survival mattered more than tradition, embraced the new approach. One evening, Liara and Jake hosted Ryan and the rest of the human team for dinner at their private quarters. The meal was a mix of Valoran and human food, representing their blended life. "So what's next for you two?" Ryan asked between bites. "Going to settle down, have kids, live the quiet life?" Jake and Liara exchanged a look. "Define quiet," Jake said with a smile. "There's been increased pirate activity in the outer systems," Liara explained. "Small groups taking advantage of the power vacuum after the war. They're targeting civilians." Lisa grinned. "And let me guess, you two are going to do something about it." "Someone should," Jake said. "The formal military is still reorganizing. These people need help now." "So you're going to fight pirates?" Marcus asked. "We're going to stop pirates," Lara corrected. "Using everything Jake taught me. Fast, efficient, no unnecessary combat." Ryan raised his glass. "To the most dangerous married couple in the galaxy." Everyone drank to that. Later that night, after the others had left, Liara and Jake stood on their balcony once more. It had become their spot, the place where they had their most honest conversations. "Do you regret it?" Liara asked. "Marrying me? Getting pulled into our war?" Jake thought about it, really thought about it. 3 months ago, I would have said this was just another mission, another assignment. Now he pulled her close. Now I can't imagine my life going any other way. You changed me, princess. Made me think about what I'm fighting for instead of just how to fight. I could say the same about you. You showed me that strength isn't just physical, that true power comes from adaptability, intelligence, and knowing when to fight and when to think. We make a good team, the best. They stood there as the city lights spread below them, two worlds that had come together through war and found peace through partnership. In the distance, stars shone in the night sky. Each one represented worlds, species, civilizations. Each one held potential for conflict or cooperation. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Pirates, warlords, power-hungry empires. There would always be threats, always be problems that needed solving. But Jake and Liara had learned something important. Some problems required armies and fleets, but some required small teams of smart, determined people, willing to do what was necessary. People who could adapt, improvise, and overcome. Ready for the next mission? Jake asked. Lara smiled, her warrior's heart beating in sync with her human husband's. Always across the galaxy. In the halls of the Kryn government, War Marshal Krathos met with his council. They discussed trade agreements, border disputes, and the challenges of peace. But in a quiet moment, Krathos pulled up a recording of Jake from the peace negotiations, the human who had killed his son, the man who had ended a war. "What are you watching?" one counselor asked. Krathos replayed Jake's words. "Don't let more parents bury their children because of pride. You still think about him, every day." Kados turned off the recording, but not with hate, with respect. He was right. My son died for nothing. But because that human fought so hard for peace, no other fathers will lose their sons to this war. He stood. We should learn from them. From humans. They're not strong like we are, but they win anyway. That makes them dangerous in ways we never expected. Back on Valoria, Emperor Kenny held a private meeting with his military advisors. They discussed the restructuring of their forces, the integration of human tactics, and the future of their alliance. "Some say we've lost our honor by learning from humans," one general said. Kanye looked at him coldly. "Some said that 30 years ago when the war started. Where did honor get us? Billions dead, colonies destroyed, our species on the brink of extinction." He gestured to the peaceful city outside. "Then my daughter married a human, one human, and he saved us all." He stood. Honor didn't save us. Adaptation did. Intelligence did. Learning from humans did. Anyone who can't accept that can retire, because I'm not losing another generation of Valorans, because we were too proud to change. The meeting ended in silence. Change was hard. Tradition died slowly. But across Valorant space, a new generation was learning. They studied human tactics alongside traditional combat. They learned to value efficiency as much as honor. They understood that survival required flexibility. Years later, historians would look back at this moment, the moment when two species brought together by desperation and bound by an arranged marriage changed the future of the galaxy. They would study Jake Morrison, the human who fought alone and won. They would analyze his tactics, his methods, his philosophy. But they would also study Princess Liara Valara, the warrior who learned to think instead of just fight, who accepted change when her people needed it most, who loved a human not because she had to, but because she chose to. Together, they proved something important. That true strength wasn't in refusing to change. It was in having the courage to evolve, to adapt, to become something more than what you were. In a small room in the palace, Jake worked on equipment, while Liara reviewed intelligence reports. It was a normal evening, comfortable, domestic, but through the window, stars beckoned. Somewhere out there, someone needed help, some problem needed solving. Jake looked up from his work and caught Liara watching him. "What?" he asked. "Just thinking about how much has changed. Regrets?" "Never." She stood and walked to him, taking his hands in hers. "I married a human for peace, political necessity, duty. And now I'm married to my best friend, my partner, the most dangerous and annoying person I've ever met." She smiled. "And I wouldn't change a single thing." Jake pulled her close. "Even the part where I crashed through armies by myself and gave you a heart attack. Especially that part. It taught me something important." "What's that?" "That humans are terrifying, and I'm very glad you're on our side." They laughed together, the sound echoing in their quiet quarters. Outside, the galaxy turned. Empires rose and fell. Wars started and ended. Life continued in all its complex, messy, beautiful forms. But in that moment, in that room, two people from different worlds found what so many search for and so few find. Understanding, respect, partnership, love. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the next challenge was already forming, the next mission waiting, the next problem requiring human creativity and valor and strength working together. But that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight there was peace. Tomorrow they would face whatever came together. Human and Valoran, husband and wife, partners in every sense of the word. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humans. They looked weak, but they were the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. Not because of what they were born with, but because of what they learned to become. And when you combined human adaptability with Valoran honor and strength, you got something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that couldn't be stopped, couldn't be defeated. You got hope. The end.